Thank you, Murray. Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to this commemoration and reflection of 50 years of Orkney Islands Council. This afternoon we will also contributors from the voices that will be very familiar to you, where we will set out the highlights of the story of Orkney Island Council in its first 50 years. And of course, isn't it fitting that we gather in St Magnus Cathedral, undoubtedly one of the most significant assets entrusted to Orkney Islands Council on behalf of the people of Orkney. Today, however, we're here to reflect not only on this remarkable building, but on the wider story of the services the Council took on back in 1975. Today we mark that journey, guided by our local cast, and by Haverford, one of Orkney's most accomplished and well-kept and listened to citizens. Abby.
Thank you, Graham, and indeed, there very nearly wasn't an Orkney Islands Council. Back in the late 1960s, a report on the future of local government in Scotland, chaired by Lord Wheatley, proposed a two-tier structure of regions and districts, with Orkney and Shetland absorbed as districts within the proposed new Highland Regional Council. It triggered furious opposition, led by the Northern Isles MP Joe Grimmond, and the Conservative Party committed themselves to giving the islands their own local authorities. When Edward Heath unexpectedly won the 1970 general election, he kept his word. On the 7th of May 1974, the new Orkney Islands Council was elected to shadow the existing County Council for its final year, with George Marwick as convener and George Stevenson as vice-convener. The range of experience of the new members was impressive. When they took over full responsibility in 1975, George Marwick reminded members at the first statutory meeting that the council was small enough for members to know one another, and that their duty was to take an Orkney-wide view, and that summed up their mission so well. The challenges that the new authority faced were immense. It had to amalgamate the functions of the former county council with those of the two town councils of Kirkwall and Stromness. It also had to implement the 1974 Orkney County Council Act, which gave it responsibility for the management of tanker operations and the planning of the oil terminal, and the development of what was effectively a sovereign wealth fund. And as if that wasn't big enough to take on, there soon emerged new challenges that brought community and council together, as Orkney Heritage Society's chairman, Spencer Rosie, who was himself a councillor from 1982, recalls.
Well, many thanks for inviting me to speak at this event. I had the opportunity in the summer to say to the convener that this was an anniversary worth marking and celebrating the people who made it possible to maintain local government within our islands. And it's significant that the three island authorities are the only survivors from that major reorganisation of local government in Scotland. My involvement in local politics began with the No Uranium campaign, spearheaded by Orkney Heritage Society. Over a couple of decades, Orkney faced a number of challenges to its traditional industries, from aspects of the nuclear industry. The main threat came from the possibility of mining uranium in a belt stretching between Stromness and Yesnavik. There was strong public opposition, which eventually led Orkney Islands to the Orkney Islands Council, including a no uranium mining clause in its structure plan. This was challenged and a public inquiry was held which recommended removal of the clause. It was shortly after I returned to Orkney late in 1979 that a public meeting was held to discuss the Secretary of State for Scotland's decision in the matter. He allowed Orkney Islands Council to keep the clause that said the final decision on whether such mining could go ahead would rest with the Westminster Government. While a partial victory, this still left doubt for Orkney's future. So as a result, a group of us got together to form a campaign group to seek greater autonomy for Orkney with the aim of gaining control over mineral rights. While in Aberdeen, I had become interested in the autonomy issue after many a discussion with John Goodland from Shetland, and I joined the newly formed Shetland Movement. A similar group in Orkney seemed a logical step. The timing of us setting up could not have been better, as in the spring of 1980, the North of Scotland Hydroelectric Board announced the intention of placing a 10% surcharge on electricity users in the islands served by diesel generators. The Orkney movement led a campaign against the imposition of such a tariff, which went against the ethos of the creation of the electricity board in the post-war period. And we leafleted all households connected to the grid, urging people not to pay. This effective grassroots campaign gave confidence to OIC and ultimately the other two island authorities in advising people not to pay. The surcharge was soon dropped. I turned our campaign group into a political party by standing in the 1982 OIC election under the movement name. I was strongly advised against doing this, there being a strong resistance here against party politics at the local government level. However, I was adamant that the electorate should be clear about why I was standing, and as it turned out, it did not harm my chances, and I became the first to be elected to OIC under a party political banner. After being elected, there was very quickly an opportunity to push the autonomy issue after the government set up the Montgomery Committee of Inquiry into the functions and powers of the three island authorities. While the outcome accepted the case for greater local control, recommending that the opportunity should be taken wherever possible to consolidate, develop and extend the present powers of the three island authorities. The ultimate report merely tinkered with the status quo. It did, however, vindicate those who campaigned against Orkney and Shetland being subsumed in a greater Highland Regional Council. Another opportunity for greater autonomy came with the Scottish Constitutional Convention, which was set up to pave the way for a Scottish Parliament. OIC convener Edwin Newson chaired the Islands Working Group, and its recommendations were accepted by the Convention. As recommended, the island authorities should be able to take on more powers as and when they were able to demonstrate an ability to take these powers on. It also stated that Orkney, Shetland and Western Isles were sufficiently unique and distinctive from the rest of Scotland as to warrant separate consideration in any proposals to establish a Scottish Parliament. These proposals were unfortunately not supported by the government, maintaining that any decision on the future of the Islands Council would be for the Scottish Parliament to make. Going back to the nuclear threat, in 1986 there was the public inquiry into the proposed European demonstration reprocessing plant at Dounreay. When the inquiry came to Kirkwall, opposition was led by Orkney Islands Council. Having been a rather minor participant and witness to the proceedings, I can say it was Edwin Newson's finest hour. He spoke not only for Orkney, but also represented the position of Shetland and Western Isles. His towering performance had the best legal brains on the nuclear side on the ropes. About the same time, a third threat came in a proposal to dump low and intermediate level nuclear waste down oil field type drilled holes beneath the seabed in the Stormybank area west of Orkney. This again received strong opposition across all of Orkney's main renewable industries, such as agriculture, fishing and tourism. A Stormybank group was formed and held a plebiscite asking the people of Orkney, do you support the proposal to put radioactive waste in the seabed at Stormybank, west of Orkney? Some 6,000 people had signed, with 99.9% saying no to the question. OIC convener Edwin Hudson was then able to take this result to Europe and help them win unanimous support from the Conference of Preferable Maritime Regions in opposing nuclear waste dumping beneath the seabed. And before I finish, I just wanted to say a few words on how appropriate it is to mark this anniversary in this great building. Meetings of Orkney's autonomous law time were held here, and in later centuries, Kirkleton Council met here before a more permanent Tolbooth was acquired. Elections to the Borough Council took place in the nave at Michaelmas, the 29th of September. And of course, when Orkney Islands Council came into being, it inherited ownership of this great building, making it the only local government authority anywhere to have responsibility for an intact medieval cathedral. Now, on the north side of the nave, directly opposite the pathway 2, is a window dedication. It's to Sir James David Marwick, who was a giant of local government in Scotland. Marwick had the distinction of being the leading local government official in Scotland's two largest cities, being Town Clerk of Edinburgh, before being poached by Glasgow, where he oversaw its rise to become Britain's second most important city. He also did much to preserve Scottish local government history by editing many volumes of local government records. Thank you.
In the face of so many challenges, the Islands Council had a fine line to draw. It had, on the one hand, to be tenacious in opposition to impending threats. It had also, as the smallest local authority, to build alliances wherever it could. This was a strategy that had worked well with Joe Grimond as Northern Isles MP. And from the general election of 1983, it continued under his successor, Jim Wallace, who would later become Baron Wallace of Tankerus.
Firstly, heartfelt congratulations to Orkney Islands Council, to members, to officers and to employees who have served this community over the last 50 years. When I sat down to think about it, I was somewhat shocked when I realised that for almost half that time, the 24 years from 1983 to 2007, I had the privilege of representing Orkney at a parliamentary level, either in Westminster or Holyrood, and for 2 years between 1999 and 2001 at both. I'd like to think that during that time, I had a good working relationship with OIC, with its chief executives, its officers, who were invariably helpful and constructive, and not least, I valued working with the respective conveners, Edwin Hudson, Jackie Tate, Hugh Honker-Johnson, and Stephen Hagan. Edwin Hudson was one of the first people whom I ever met in Orkney, admittedly as president of the Liberal Association rather than the council convener. He was a councillor with long experience in local government, and what was still the relatively early days of the Islands Authority, he was a steady hand on the tiller. As we've heard from Spencer, Edwin played an influential role in the Islands Committee of the Scottish Constitutional Convention, work that was then continued by Hugh Honker-Johnson, to ensure that the Islands communities were properly recognised in any devolution settlement. Indeed, the Convention's final report recognised that the geographical and historical circumstances of the island's communities warranted distinctive constitutional consideration, and proposed that in the Scottish Parliament there should be one MSP for each of Orkney, Shetland and the Western Isles. Jackie Tate always struck me as a man not only steeped in the Orcadian way of life, but totally dedicated to achieving the best for the Isles in all his dealings. We had a good working relationship, which at a very practical level meant that we took turnabout in proposing the vote of thanks at dinners where we were both guests. And there was one occasion, at the end of a dinner hosted by the RSPB, that I realised it was my turn. So I said how good it was to be entertained by the county's biggest landowner. I'm not sure it went down all that well with our hosts. In every case, I observed the very effective ways in which successive conveners acted as ambassadors for Orkney. OIC conveners and councillors up to this present day have played important roles in the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities as vice presidents or as lead spokespersons in vital areas. In addition, in a number of other bodies, such as the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions, Orkney and Orcadian representatives have more than pulled their weight and made a contribution disproportionate to our size. From 1996, the Convention of the Highlands and Islands provided an important forum for the Council to engage with government. I have a very vivid memory of the first time when OIC hosted the convention in December 1997. Up to 500 farmers gathered in Broad Street outside to protest to the Secretary of State, Donald Dewar, about the dire state of the beef industry. It was a protest I found all the more powerful because of the almost total silence of those protesting. And in fairness to Donald Dewar, he spoke to some of those standing there and then arranged for the NFU representatives to meet him inside to discuss the situation. And after 1999, it fell to conveners Hugh Halker-Johnson and Stephen Egan to engage with and establish relationships with the new Scottish Parliament and government. And that they did with skill and diplomacy. Over the years, forging alliances, including nurturing relationships and being adept at using larger platforms, have been important in amplifying our voice and have brought about undoubted advantages for smaller local authorities. However, I've also thought that there are times which merit advantage in emphasising our differences and distinctiveness. When I had the responsibility for further higher education in the Scottish Executive, officials queried why it was that Orkney College and Shetland College enjoyed a degree of independence from central government, not given to other FE colleges. And I was able to fill the gap in the corporate memory by explaining that when the Scottish Office took over responsibility for further education colleges in the early 1990s, OIC and SIC made a case for separate status, as at that time, further education provision in each case was physically well integrated into our secondary schools. I recall making the case to the Secretary of State, Ian Lang, that it would be a nonsense to have two separate cleaning contracts for the one shared corridor. And in fairness, he got the point. And I use that as an example of the Council highlighting with me a very real practical issue, which I was then able to pursue with government. And I consider such coordination essential in working together to achieve a common aim for the benefit of our community. In turn, I also tried to ensure good working relationships with government ministers. That mattered, particularly during what was possibly the gravest time in the last 50 years, the removal of children from South Ronaldsay. I don't want to dwell on an issue which must still be grievous for many, but simply to say that when it happened, the then Scottish Office Minister responsible for social work, Michael Forsyth, said that he wouldn't wish such a difficult situation on any constituency MP, and his door would always be open. And indeed, I was pushing at an open door when I made the case for the full judicial inquiry which the community undoubtedly sought. The dynamic between council and government inevitably changed after the establishment of the Scottish Parliament. I suppose in no small way because as Deputy First Minister there was an element of direct access. I did recall a parliamentary visit to Catalonia in the early 1990s to find out why the business community supported devolved government. And their answer, in translation, was roughly, I was told it was because the bombs were closer to kick. At times I felt a bit like that after 1999. But it was also the case that I was able to have direct access to other ministers, which helped to advance objectives identified by both the council and myself. For example, the community's calls for an instrument landing system at Kirkwall Airport, the introduction of an air discount scheme for island residents, the decision to locate the European Green Energy Centre at Stromness, thus helping to advance the shared objective of council and government to embrace the development of renewable energy and help further the local objective of having Orkney as a trailblazer destination. And a decade later, it was fortuitous that my successor as MP, Alistair Carmichael, was Secretary of State for Scotland and able to establish the framework for the islands. So, what do I conclude from my experience of representing Orkney and working with councillors and successive governments? In a nutshell, it's that people matter. It is important to establish and to nurture relationships with those responsible for governing and administering locally, and in turn, in order to be effective, maintain good relationships with those in government at a Scottish and UK level, whatever their party politics. We wouldn't always necessarily agree, but conducting our business in a constructive and respectful manner, focusing on the common weal of this special and unique islands community, must surely be the goal to which we aspire. Thank you.
Orkney was also helped by its strategic position in Scottish and British politics as one of the main producers of North Sea oil. And so, over the years, the Council found itself with a lot of key visitors to meet, each of whom was able to listen carefully to local concerns and to be a potential sympathetic ear for the future. There were also quite a number of royal visitors, as Orkney's Lord Lieutenant today, Elaine Grieve, can confirm.
It is a great pleasure and a privilege to be with you this afternoon as we celebrate 50 years of Orkney Islands Council. 50 years of local democracy, leadership and service to this unique and quite remarkable community. For me, this anniversary holds a very special connection. I began working for the Council in 1978, 3 years after its establishment, and remained part of its story until 2011. Those years gave me a deep appreciation of the dedication and skill of those who serve Orkney through local government. People who are our friends, family members and neighbours, committed to ensuring that these islands thrive while never losing sight of our sense of community and place. Over these 50 years, Orkney has been honoured by many royal visits, each coordinated by the Lieutenancy, but carefully planned and delivered with support from Council staff. Whether formal or informal, each visit a moment of pride and friendship that reflects the interest shown by the royal family in our islands. Most notable for Orkney Islands Council occurred in August 1978, when Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II came to open the new council offices in School Place. The Royal Yacht Britannia lay in Scapa Flow, and after visiting the county show, Her Majesty unveiled a plaque, met staff and councillors, and brought a great sense of pride to a young and ambitious local authority finding its feet. No account of royal visits to Orkney would be complete without celebrating the extraordinary affection for these islands shown by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who was Orkney's most frequent royal visitor of the 20th century. She made a number of visits, her final one in 1992, just after her 92nd birthday, when she travelled to Flota to visit the oil terminal and to meet the community there. A special occasion for this magnificent building came in 1987, when the community of Orkney marked the 850th anniversary of St. Magnus Cathedral. Attended by both Her Majesty the Queen Mother and Her Majesty the Queen, we enjoyed the unveiling of the magnificent new west window, a gesture that brought together faith, heritage and continuity, much like the cathedral itself. Also in attendance was King Olav of Norway, a visit that beautifully symbolised the long and deep ties between Orkney and Norway, bonds of history, kinship and shared seas. Demonstrated again in 1994 when King Harald V and Queen Sonja visited. They toured St. Magnus Cathedral, met the community and visited the Norwegian war graves, paying tribute to the many bonds of friendship, sacrifice and shared history that unite our two nations. A few years later, in 1997, we welcomed His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, now His Majesty the King, when he toured St. Magnus Cathedral and made a visit to Orford to open the new community school there, a day remembered fondly across the parish and beyond. His Majesty has continued that tradition of a close and enduring connection with our islands. His most recent visit was in August 2022, when he visited Melsecker House and spoke with people from the communities of Hoy and Walls. What we were unaware of at the time was that only a matter of weeks later, he was to become our new monarch, His Majesty King Charles III. Through the years, Orkney continued to attract royal visits that shine a light on our modern story. In 2016, Her Royal Highness, the Princess Royal, attended the Battle of Jutland commemorations, honouring those who gave their lives in service at sea. A moment of solemn remembrance that resonated deeply across Orkney and further afield. In 2021, we welcomed the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, now the Prince and Princess of Wales, to mark another milestone in Orkney's journey, the opening of the Balfour Hospital, our world-class healthcare facilities for island communities. Earlier this year, we were delighted once more to welcome Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal, this time to open the 2025 Island Games, an event that brought together islanders from across the world in friendship and sporting spirit. The Princess Royal is no stranger to Orkney. She has visited many times, sometimes as a passenger aboard the Northern Lighthouse moored vessel Pharos, other times visiting lifeboat stations, as she did in 2019 to mark the 50th anniversary of the loss of the Long Hope lifeboat, when she took time to speak with the remaining widows of the brave men lost on that fateful night in 1969. These are but a few of the royal visits spread across 5 decades that Orkney has enjoyed. Each visit coordinated by the Lieutenancy with support of a dedicated team within Orkney Islands Council, working with many departments to ensure that visits are managed in such a way as to showcase Orkney at its best. Each visit reminds us not only of Orkney's unique place within the United Kingdom, but also of the deep affection held for these islands by successive generations of the royal family. As we mark this milestone in the Council's history, it is fitting that we look both back to where the journey began and forward to what may lie ahead. Back with pride at all that has been achieved, and forward with confidence in the years to come. As His Majesty's Lord Lieutenant of Orkney, I congratulate all who have served, past and present. I thank you for your support and for the difference you have made and continue to make to the lives of those who proudly call Orkney home. Thank you.
And what about the day-to-day work of the Council? Harvey Johnston is ideally placed to reflect on that, both as a former convener and as part of Orkney's farming tradition, a tradition that has taken him to teaching agriculture at Orkney College and becoming its deputy principal, and to continuing in verse the wonderful tradition of Orkney's parish concerts.
In 2005, there was an event held in the then quite new Pickway Centre to mark 30 years of Orkney Islands Council. And for some reason, I was invited as an itinerant entertainer to do something for the event, which I didn't mind. Actually, was attended by Jack McDonald on behalf of the Scottish Government. And I know no similar appropriate representation today. Just saying. Anyway, among other things, I did a piece entitled "If It Wasn't for the Council." So I dug it up again and have refreshed it for this even greater celebration. If it wasn't for the Council, where would we be? What we archipelago and scale out in the sea? For life here in the islands would be washed for thee and thee, if it was not for the Orkney Islands Council. In half 100 years no since our council came to be, it's presided over 50 years sustained prosperity, and in 40 years employment to Harry Boyle and me. Congratulations, Orkney Islands Council. The Orkneys have been special bounteous of land and sea, and a place of great importance throughout all history, at the very epicentre of much global strategy before the days of Orkney Islands Council. In Neolithic times, where standing stones were first and best, Earl Thorfinn ruled half Scotland faced Alice way up west. In both world wars, poor Britain would be beat in each contest, if not for Orkney's harbours and our islands. To have our Orkney Islands and its folk within its care marks our council the most privileged of councils anywhere, a great responsibility of which they're well aware, the members of our Orkney Islands Council. Orkney's is the People's Council, here for everyone and each, for our council reaches heights that lesser councils never reach. None has a fine cathedral or a college for to teach within the care of Orkney Islands Council. Builds and runs fantastic care homes with our body Orkney names, runs harbours, piers and ferries and the inter-island planes, built the magic Picky Centre for these Golden Island Games. Wouldn't have happened without Orkney Islands Council. If it wasn't for the council, where would we be? Were penny archipelago that scaled out in the sea, past and present staff and members on this golden jubilee. Thanks for your part in Orkney Islands Council. Thank you.
At around the same time that Elaine joined the council as a teacher, so too did today's convener, Graham. He similarly went on to administration, becoming a senior education manager. Graham, you're well placed indeed to look at the sheer range of ways in which the Islands Council is involved in the life of Orkney.
Thank you, Harry. A local authority exists first and foremost to provide essential public services for its community. And in Orkney, that commitment has always been at the heart of what we do. Over the years, generations of elected members, supported by dedicated officers, staff across every service, have consistently worked to deliver the very best for the people of these islands. That spirit of service has shaped the modern Orkney that we know today. One of our greatest strengths has always been the value we place on education, culture and community well-being. Having served as both a teacher and in educational management, I've seen firsthand the imagination and ambition our council brings with every opportunity. We have long believed that investment in people and in place is the foundation of long-term success, and that belief has guided many of our most significant achievements. You can see it clearly in our schools and cultural facilities. For me, the construction of Stromness Academy in the late 1980s, and later the building of the new Stromness Primary School, it set new standards for learning environments. And in Kirkwall, the creation of Kirkwall Grammar School, integrated with the lovely Orkney Arts Theatre, and of course the Bickequine swimming pool. They delivered not only modern classrooms, but a culture and leisure legacy for the whole community. These were not simply construction projects. They were investments in our young people, in our creativity, and in our collective future. Equally important was the transformation of these old schools, in Stromness for example, where they created the Orkney Research and Innovation Campus. That single decision secured a permanent home for our expanding renewables sector and confirmed Heriot-Watt University's long-term presence in Orkney today. And of course, when the world speaks about innovation in marine renewables, it speaks about Orkney. That reputation is no accident. It's a result of decades of foresight and determination. For an island community of our size, we're fortunate to have such a strong higher educational presence. Alongside Heriot-Watt, we have long-standing links with Robert Gordon's University, and of course our very own University of the Highlands and Islands, Orkney campuses. Our leadership in archaeology through degree programs and a world-class renowned research institute, something that's unique in Scotland, and it contributes to our national and international standing. It's no surprise then that while libraries have been closing across the United Kingdom, Orkney has built 2 new libraries in this century alone. Nor is it surprising that our care homes, leisure facilities and community venues remain amongst the best anywhere in Scotland. Achievements like these do not happen by chance. They require vision, confidence, and elected members courageous enough to seize opportunities when they arise. That leads naturally to a question: how did all this become possible? I do believe that the truth is that the arrival of the oil industry was transformative. Its emergence coincided with the early years of the new Orkney Islands Council. Together, these developments changed the trajectory of our islands. The establishment of the Orkney Oil Reserve Fund, often described as our goose that laid the golden eggs. It gave us a financial foundation that few local authorities enjoy. But let's be clear, it was not just money alone that made the difference. It was the people that believed in Orkney's future. Our first council leaders, including Chief Executive Graham Lapsley, Convener George Marlow, and the work of our MP at the time, Joe Grimond. They worked tirelessly to secure the best possible settlement for Orkney. Their foresight laid the groundwork for the partnerships and protections that we still benefit from today. more recent example of similar vision can be found in the creation of the Big Finder. The idea came from Alan Custon, the Assistant Director of Leisure and Community Education at the time. He dreamt of a new sporting, leisure and cultural hub for Orkney. It was going to cost a lot of money. But the council agreed to support him if he could raise half the cost from elsewhere. Not only did he succeed, he exceeded that target. And the Picky Centre is now one of the most valued community assets, and it stands as a testament to what we can achieve when dedicated staff and community ambition work hand in hand. Over the years, the Reserve Fund has supported hundreds of projects across our islands. It provides invaluable help, particularly it did so during the COVID-19 pandemic, offering urgent support to families, organisations, community groups and local businesses. But we also remember the human cost behind the industry that helped shape our progress. The Piper Alpha disaster of 1988 remains a solemn reminder of the dangers faced in the oil industry then. The improved safety standards that followed that incident are very much part of its legacy, and we should never forget. Ultimately, as we come back to, our Orkney people are the greatest strength in our community. Our community councils are regarded as one of the strongest systems of grassroots engagement in Scotland, empowered to make change. Many of our most enduring festivals, St Magnus Festival, Folk Festival and Science Festival, among others, were created by local people with a passion to make a difference. For nearly 50 years, they have thrived, supported in many cases by early investment from our Orkney Islands Council's reserves. But not only did they get help from Orkney Islands Council, but that unlocked external funding and multiplied the benefits and inward investment to Orkney over many years and many, many millions of pounds. But we also take great pride in our heritage. While we may occasionally grumble about potholes and grass cutting, we recognise the extraordinary richness of our past, from our world-famous archaeology to our internationally significant naval history. The centenary of the Battle of Jutland, where Orkney stood at the heart of global remembrance, remains a defining moment for me. And of course the refurbishment of the Scapa Flow Museum further reflects our commitment to honouring that legacy. In my civic role as convener, I am immensely proud to represent Orkney and receive guests to Orkney from across the world to experience just what and why Orkney is a fine place to know about. With visits from Japan and Canada, and many from closer to home, we showcase the best for Orkney, what it has to offer, and build connections from the past, now and the future. And our ties with Norway remain strong after more than 40 years of twinning with Hordaland, now Westland. And just last week, the annual tree lighting ceremony is just one symbolic reminder of this enduring friendship, which this building is so much part of. Our cultural life remains vibrant, from agricultural shows to sporting events. They continue to look out to it and allows us to flourish. And I can't go past, of course, 2025 International Island Games. They showcased Orkney at its very best, arguably the highlight of our last 50 years, helped along by a modicum of perfect weather. As a friend and a past Chief Executive of Orkney Islands Council for over 22 years, Alistair Buchan often coined the phrase to me, Orkney punches well above its weight. I believe that this has never been more true than it is today. We succeed because we always strive to do better, to innovate, to work together, and to seize every opportunity for the greater good of our islands.
Something coming through the story of these past 50 years again and again is is the vital need for Orkney to collaborate with its fellow island authorities. And this is something in which Stephen Heddle has been closely involved as a former convener as well as a councillor.
Thanks, Ollie. In representing the people of Orkney, though I see needs to look beyond our shores to be ambitious and to fight our colour. Each of the 12 councils and 8 leaders over the years will have examples of this, but I will discuss the one I'm most familiar with, what was done under the Our Future banner, what resulted, and where we are now. I'll speak of a time when all 3 islands councils successfully came together as never before to change the laws of this land. I'm saying that the council is not just about wheelie bins, although wheelie bins are important. Indeed, can you have too many wheelie bins? In 2012, it was evident that the impending independence referendum was a disruption that brought opportunities for more empowerment of islands and recognition of our situation if we could seize the agenda in some way. Empowerment had been advocated by the Montgomery Committee 30 years earlier, but since then we receded from government thinking to the extent that we feared for our existence should there be another reorganisation of local government. Council set up a working group to discuss this, and in parallel relationships were being developed with other islands councils. Very fortunately, the 3 islands council leaders, myself, Gary Robinson and Angus Campbell, headed off, and as early as June 2012, we written down a list of shared issues under the heading Opportunities for Constitutional Reform. We later mythologised that this took place in a bar, but really it happened over cups of tea in the Hotel Mercure in Inverness, and then in the bar. By the start of 2013, the 3 islands councils had formally agreed to work together. And this was so important as we presented the front list, the islands, a whole geography, as opposed to a solitary council which could be picked off and turned against its neighbours. We agreed principles such as we took no side in the independence referendum, but what we were asking for was not dependent on the result, hoping to create a beauty contest between Westminster and Holyrood when asked what could be done for us. We agreed our asks must be reasonable and deliverable and for a purpose, so it could not be dismissed out of hand. And we agreed to use the media to try and capture the imagination of the wider public. We had no levers other than to make the governments look bad if they were bad to us, the plucky global islanders. So the plucky global islanders went for it, all the while doing our homework and ruthlessly planning what we were going to do up to 2 years ahead if we got the governments on board. What were we asking for? Well, we distilled it down to 4 all-encompassing themes in a concise 3-page position statement calling for more autonomy for islands, which we launched at a press conference in Edinburgh in June 2013. The themes were based around resources, location, governance and culture, including the way we speak, and underpinning all this island proofing of all national policy and legislation. This ambitious pitch made the national press as desired. They were impressed both by our ambition and by his management of video conferencing work way back in 2013. Immediately, we wanted to get the governments and their oppositions on board. We wanted to talk to them, so we sent them all detailed questionnaires on their asks, but offering face-to-face talks instead if they preferred. And on 5 that don't want to commit themselves in writing, they would go for the talks instead. After only a week, we got the declaration from Alex Salmond, pledging that a ministerial working group would examine the prospect of decentralising power to Shetland, Orkney and the Western Isles. 3 weeks later, the Secretary of State for Scotland invited us to London for talks. We had our beauty contest. Our tiny teams took on both governments and a large range of asks and policy areas that we now had to understand in detail for a treadmill of meetings over the next year. We divided it up between the 3 councils and worked hand in glove with careful choreography and trust. We worked hard to keep other councils on side, especially the other councils with islands. The Cities Alliance contacted us to agree on a non-aggression pact. And in Europe, the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions Islands Commission, representing most of Europe's islands, backed us, the smallest member, even before I became its president. To maintain our media profile, we ran a conference with an all-star cast in Capital that September, 1 year before the independence referendum. And afterwards, at the meal, we had a raffle, of course. Our goals were becoming clearer. A written prospectus from the Scottish Government, responding to our arguments, and a framework from islands from Westminster, where our good fortune continued when our MP Alistair Carmichael became Secretary of State for Scotland. Our teams with the Islands Councils enjoyed working together. We shared a noble cause and seemed to be getting somewhere. We signed everything off collectively, so we're on the same page, and we knew what page we were on when we made our arguments. Each council led on some areas, everybody filled in the gaps. Our teams were good, we maintained our credibility. By May 2014, we were able to agree to the fifth draft of the Scottish Government prospectus, which would negotiate up to something substantial by diplomacy and by threatening that the First Minister would not have a prospectus to launch in a fortnight if there was not written recognition that Orkney and Shetland cannot be expected to replace and fund ferry services on their own. This meant I could send the file called Good Forward, rather than the one called Bad Forward, to the civil servants for inclusion, what was now entitled Empowering Scotland's Island Communities, formally launched by Alex Salmon at Orkney College a year to the day since we publicly launched Our Islands of Ophelia, and it contains 152 distinct commitments that relate to our asks. And in August, the UK Government published its framework for islands, which promised us representation on bodies that affect us, an islands desk in the Scotland office, horizon scanning of legislation on our behalf, and had commitments around energy and communications in the Crown Estate. The independence referendum took place a month later, and afterwards the UK Government set up the Smith Commission, promising to strengthen the Scotland Act. When it reported, the Islands Councils were the only councils named in it in relation to devolving the powers and revenues of the Crown Estate in Scotland to the Scottish Government, and then onwards to us. Meanwhile, the Scottish Government undertook to honour their commitments to the best extent that they could, and reconvened the Island Areas Ministerial Working Group for another 6 meetings, working towards an Islands Bill to address areas that need legislation, with the remaining commitments to be addressed largely in a National Islands Plan. Work started on the Crown Estate Scotland Bill, which was still in an instead due to the recommendations of the Smith Commission, and we now had a Minister for the Islands. So, where have we ended up? The Islands Scotland Act was passed during its council term in 2018, with the three Islands Councils still working together to support and promote amendments that significantly improved it. Key areas in it are the right to request the transfer of powers from the Scottish Government, Islands proofing of legislation and policy from the Scottish Government and public bodies through Islands Community Impact Assessments, the right to request retrospective impact assessments, and more flexibility around multi-member boards. It's a unique piece of place-based legislation, and it crops up whenever there is talk about empowerment of local government. The first National Islands Plan was published in 2019 with 30 strategic objectives to be addressed during its 5-year lifetime, from population, housing and transportation to fuel poverty and climate change. The Crown Estate Scotland Act was passed in 2019, and since then the Council has received £6.7 million in revenues. There's been a loosening of ties as people involved in changing the referendum has receded in the distance, but there's still much merit in the three Islands Councils working together for the same reasons as we did from 2013. We're harder to dismiss if we represent a complete geography. Not least because there's unfinished business in the Islands Act which should be reviewed, in the Islands Plan which is moving towards its second version, and in the devolution of the Crown Estate. The simple lessons from our Islands of Ophelia are that you need to pick your moment, you have to plan and commit, be realistic but ambitious, and that you need as many friends as you can get. It's an example of the ambition our Council legitimately has to seek the best for the people of Orkney, to ensure that the decisions that affect us are taken by us wherever possible. Thank you.
Over these 50 years, the Council have enriched Orkney's cultural life immensely. And among the new generation of musicians is Eric Linklater, accompanied here by a musician who has done so much for Orkney's musical groups through his playing and through his recordings, and is also a well-known councillor, Owen Tierney.
Well, when I was asked to put together a few tunes to play at this, I thought I would ask, obviously, one of the top young fiddlers at the players today, Eric Linklater. And then I thought, what we were playing, Orkney tunes. So I cast my mind back 50 years. Who were the leading fiddle players when we go in Orkney 50 years ago? The names that came to mind were Davy Hughes, Pat Shearer, originally started and of course he couldn't have possibly passed doing so. Legend in the Catholic. And they were all tunesmiths, the Albert tunes. So I put together, if you could put together set tunes, he'd given these tunes by these three legendary players that are there. And Aaron will tell you about it.
So the first tune we're going to play is a tune called The Dennis Two-Step by Davy Hewson. And then A Real Stronzi by Pat Scherer, or The Stronzi Weaver, which he wrote for his fiddle. And then we'll finish up with a couple of tunes by Hugh Exeter, The Stride and El Adam.
challenges on a scale that would have been daunting to any of the elected members had they known about them in advance. But they did cope, and now Orkney has once again to face the questions coming forward about the future. Heather Woodbridge, who is the youngest council leader in Scotland, has the task of anticipating them.
Good afternoon, everyone. When considering what I might say to you all today, I thought about just how far we have come in 50 years, how much has changed, and how much work it took us to get here. We have so many more tools available to us today, which truly makes the achievements of the past even more impressive. Perhaps AI could have written this speech for me today and saved me a little bit of time. So I wonder how new technology will shape how we work and how we deliver services in future. A disclaimer, however, this speech was not written by AI. It is imperfectly human. Humanity and equality, which you should demand from all political leaders, not just in local government. So on to the future. What forecast can I offer you all? One thing is for certain. We will need the council. We will need the council to keep delivering high-quality services, and the councillors to continue to advocate for Orkney's interests. We will need economic opportunities. We must identify and pursue opportunities that are available to us. And it's not about driving big projects forward for their own sake, but to ensure that Orkney is a sustainable place to live, with well-paying jobs, diversity of career and life opportunities for our entire community. It can't only be about us surviving, it has to be about us thriving as a place. As we've already heard, the legacy of the Strategic Reserve Fund has been tremendous for Orkney, and it continues to support our communities today. Hindsight is 2020, and there would have been challenge at the time of those proposals. But we must continue to be ambitious and to embrace opportunities that can bring economic stimulation and wealth to the people of Orkney. Now the big one. We will need to tackle the matter of our financial sustainability. Orkney Islands Council has a £20 million deficit in our annual budget. We are budgeting to take £20 million out of our reserves every year just to balance the budget. This is not sustainable. So how are we going to solve this? Well, for me personally, this is never going to be achieved by huge cuts to services that would deeply harm our communities. Our focus must be on income in all its forms, from what we get from our Scottish Government settlement and what we could generate ourselves. In many cases, our council provides the only service available to the public. Orcadians can't easily nip over to Shetland or to Caithness, hoping that they'll then put up their council services and facilities. We equally cannot borrow workers from our neighbouring areas to fill our vacancies. For many jobs, they physically need to be here in Orkney. There is no more slowing down that can be done on a material scale. A political solution is needed, and this must be our priority for the future of services that our communities depend on. However, this does not mean we don't also need to keep transforming as the world changes. New technology can help us meet the needs of communities, which I joked about earlier. There are significant opportunities in back office systems that support the frontline workforce, and we must be alive to those opportunities. So what can we do? What options are available to us? Well, this links back really neatly to the themes raised by Councillor Heddle. Crown state revenues are key with what is often referred to as Scotland's next industrial revolution. The offshore wind sector in Scotland will generate significant income to the Scottish Government. Around 1/3 of Scotland leases are in the waters around either Shetland, the Western Isles or Orkney. We must work with our island friends and allies to make Crown estate revenues work for us and ensure we don't let this opportunity fly past on the wind. The general power of competence could be a huge opportunity for local government across Scotland. So what is it? Maybe you've not heard of it. It would be legislation, among other things, that would enable councils to take forward more income generation streams alone or through partnerships. So this could allow us to explore new opportunities for investment that could give councils a reliable income stream that could protect services and move us towards that financial sustainability. So I've talked a little bit about finance. What else must we think about looking towards the future? Well, relationships are utterly key to success. Working well with our key partners at a local level within Orkney, but also our colleagues across Scotland, including our island neighbours and allies. It goes without saying we also need to maintain good relationships with government, both Scottish and UK. Really good relationships come down to having excellent communication between all parties. We need to communicate our island's issues well. We must communicate effectively our challenges and the reasons why we should be supported. And for me personally, being able to produce compelling evidence to support this where possible. When communication is lacking, it is easy to find enemies where there are none. Civil servants at every level, local, Scottish or UK, they want to do a good job for the public. And in all likelihood, they won't all have the lived experience of island life, experience the challenges that make life harder for many parts of our community. It is up to us to support their knowledge, to engage constructively and patiently to deliver for our rural and island communities. The needs of our islands are different to those in mainland Scotland, and we must consider the Islands Act. Has it met the vision for which it was conceived? How can we strengthen it? Perhaps it's time again for us to sit down with Islands colleagues, maybe in the Mercure and Inverness, to take time to review it and perhaps even test it. So you've heard about finance, we've talked about islandness, and the final theme I want to speak with you about is perhaps the most important. It's people. So what is the challenge here? In the near future, we will need a workforce to deliver services to a population with a demography weighted towards the, let's say, more experienced end. This change may bring some challenges, but that experienced population is also an asset we should not overlook. We can't predict every challenge that will be thrown at us, but we must be agile and responsive to whatever comes. Look at the COVID pandemic, a universal challenge that we rose to meet. We've shown how agile we are, and we will be ready for whatever the next challenge may be. Now, the Council is the largest employer in Orkney, and we need to make sure that they can take pride in working for the Council. We want people to look at Orkney Islands Council as an employer that they want to work for, the employer of choice. We have a skilled and dedicated workforce right now, and we are so proud of them. The challenge is that we will need a bigger one going forward. I am proud by association to work with such dedicated officers at every level, doing amazing things for our community every single day. So why did I say that this is a higher priority perhaps even than finance? Well, because if there is no one to deliver these key services, regardless of what we've got in the bank, it will not solve the problem. Now, I wouldn't truly be a North Isles councillor if I didn't mention ferries at least once. I can say for certain that new, modern and accessible ferries will be part of our future. There are truly many reasons to be optimistic, with so many brilliant projects that the Council is delivering right now that will benefit our communities well into the future. A new care home in Kirkwall, a 10-year housing strategy that will deliver housing desperately needed across all areas of Orkney, public sector reform, an important piece of work that could unlock opportunities to deliver services in a way that is truly suited to islands and improving outcomes for communities. Now, after all that, who wouldn't want to be part of the team supporting and delivering these projects? Now, I'm aware I'm one of the last presenters to speak to you today, but before the closing remarks and the communal singing that we're all looking forward to, I will just take a few more moments of your time. It is a privilege to serve the public as an elected member. A significant part of my role as council leader is to convince people how wonderful Orkney is and how important Orkney is to Scotland. I do not take that experience for granted and could not recommend standing to be an elected member enough. The role truly forces you to reflect on why Orkney is special, and for me, it's our amazing communities. For good democratic discourse in the council chamber, we need good decision makers. So if you've not already done so, I encourage you to stand for council. But perhaps you've done your shift looking at our audience today, and it's not your thing. That's okay. I encourage you to look for talented others to stand. People who are passionate about their communities. People who can self-reflect and hold their hands up when they get it wrong, which we all do sometimes. People who are willing to change their mind when new information is presented to them. And people who care about other people. It is the people in our communities who make Orkney, and these people will shape Orkney's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, for these thoughts into the future. We're all in it together. Well, we're very quickly jumping through the first 50 years of Orkney Islands Council in not much more than 90 minutes, maybe. But it's a journey that I'm delighted we've shared with you. And many thanks to all our contributors, the production team, and with a special thank you to our guide, Harvey Firth. As I bring this event to a close, I wish just to take a minute to pay tribute to our past and present conveners and leaders, and our past and present chief executives, and all the staff who have given their time and devoted their careers to lead and support Orkney Islands Council through these first 50 years. They faced many challenges head-on, as we've heard, and we've undoubtedly helped steer, shape and preserve what is so special about Orkney. And so as we come to the last part of today's celebration and commemoration, I want to pay tribute to the first three conveners who are no longer with us. They all contributed in their own ways and weathered some challenging and most interesting times. From our first convener, George Marwick, Edwin Unson, and then Jackie Tate. They all led with the aspiration to do the very best for Orkney. And once again, in the words of George Marwick, their duty was to take an Orkney-wide view, words that still resonate 50 years on. And so to that tribute, we now close with our final musical piece, the Orkney Anthem. It's a piece I was so thrilled and proud to hear live in the Millennium Dome in London, as 100 of our young people performed there to tell Orkney's story on their day in the Dome on the 15th of April 2000. It was to celebrate the new millennium, and it was fitting that Orkney Islands Council was about 25 years old then too. So to this afternoon, thank you all for attending, and we'd love to have a photo call in the cathedral here as we close. We'll call on Eric and Owen to come forward and lead the tune. The Orkney Anthem, one that was, I think, originally launched through the O'Neill Band in the 80s. And it's something that I think we all, if we look at the lyrics and the notes in the programme, should join in and sing.
Yeah, I think I would suggest that we'll let Eric play through once.